So fighter's mindset, fighter's mentality, you know, a lot of people have varying, I guess, theories on it. I'm just going to give my 2 cents worth. So the first thing that sort of we need to address is there's a lot of people out there that just say things like, you know, and we're talking about self-defense context as opposed to combat sports right now, is that they'll say, oh, if I see red, it's all over. You know, problem with that is if you can't fight, you know, just getting angry is not going to bridge that gap and automatically, you know, give you skills. If you have no skills, getting angry is not going to help you. You need to have skills, you know, point blank. You don't go from a white belt to a black belt just by being angry. If only it was that simple. You know, so that's, that needs to be sort of looked at a little bit, but the problem is there's like an element of truth behind it, and that there's an element of truth behind that for certain people. And we'll sort of talk a little bit about that. So when we talk in terms of the mental state of people whilst they're in a fight, the correct term to be used is called arousal. So arousal is basically in that state of heightened emotion. Now there's a lot of theories about arousal and its effect on sports performance. So first of all, one of the most common ones is called the drive theory. So if we have, you know, performance and arousal, the drive theory states that as arousal increases, so too does performance. So they're saying the more hyped up you get, the better you'll perform. Now, the thing about that is, it is true in certain aspects. So if you're involved in a short duration, say an anaerobic event, that doesn't require much strategy, it does help. So things like a 100-meter sprint, you know, a shot put, a power lifter just lifting once, an Olympic lifter. Come on! Things like that. Now, does that fit in the self-defense realm? Maybe, because if you look at those things, you know, it can be short in duration. It is generally anaerobic. However, you need to strategize to some degree. Sometimes you don't, but quite often there has to be a strategy. There has to be some thought processes involved. And so because of that, I think this theory doesn't quite cut it, you know. So I'm not the biggest fan of that one when it comes to self-defense. And also, if you talk about combat sports, you can't hype yourself up, you know, to that nth degree and expect your performance to be good, because what you'll do is you'll come out like a bull out of a gate, you'll throw a lot of shots, you'll get tired, and your performance will not increase. You know, you have to be able to perform for the latter rounds and things like that. So that doesn't fit in combat sports either. There's another one called the zone of optional functioning. The difference about that is it takes into account different personality types. It also takes into account different events. So it's like a staggered set of columns, horizontal columns, which vary dependent on the individual. Because there are certain individuals, you know, out there that are really placid and easygoing, and they got to get hyped up to perform better, you know. And they're getting hyped up or getting aroused is probably the equivalent of, you know, the average person. So, you know, it takes into account those other factors, and there's an element of truth in there. My favourite one is basically the inverted U theory, which is basically like an upside down U to some extent, and it states that, you know, if I put a line through there, a line through here, this is your optimal level, this is where you want to be to perform at your best. So if you're under aroused, your performance will be low. If you're over aroused, your performance will be low as well. So this is the one I sort of refer to. The other thing about this is there's a variation on this, basically called the catastrophe model, where once it hits there, that point, then it just declines like rapidly. So there are all some theories about it. Again, it's up to you to find out what works best for you. It's really difficult to do that in self-defense context because I don't want you to go around starting fights and things like that. But you know, you can take it from other areas of life. Like one area that I've looked into is you know, sports psychology. When I was a basketball player, I remember we played this grand final once, and there was a team that had, you know, all their supporters, and they were heckling us. And all it did was made me mad and pissed me off, and I just wanted to tear heads off. And what happened is my gross motor movements got better, so my ability to absorb punishment, to put my body on the line, all that stuff went up. But my fine motor skills deteriorated, so I could not shoot in that context because of my mental state. Now, sure, basketball is very different, but that example sort of illustrates a few important points. And the thing about, you know, fighting is, quite often in self-defense mode, yeah, it is, there isn't much strategy. You just come forward and throw those shots or whatever, However, you've got to problem solve. You've got to be able to think on your feet. And the other thing it doesn't take into account in a self-defense context is, when you put the brakes on, by that I mean once you beat someone up or whatever, when you stop, observing the environment for, third parties that may come in, for weapons and all those other things, and just being conscious or being controlled in the moment so that A, you don't go too far, so that B, you're able to apply certain skills and things instead of just crash and bash, So there is that element of it. The best example I can think of is how a fighter's mindset should be is Craig Hunter. Now, Craig Hunter, Season 2, Ultimate Self-Defense Championship. Tell you a little bit about his story. He doesn't train. He used to train with me. He's trained with me on and off for, a long time now, but he'll turn up, disappear for a couple of months, do a couple of days and that kind of thing. Life gets in the way. And we've sort of made him out to basically have stepped off a pub stool and into the series, which is, it's kind of accurate because week before the series, we needed a replacement. I was racking my brains. I thought, he'd be great. So I called him up and he's like, yeah, do you think I'll be able to go all right? I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't be calling you, mate, if I didn't think so. He's like, yeah, sign me up, no worries. Put me in. So he didn't hesitate to sit there and go, oh shit, I'm fighting these high level fighters. He was just like, I'll jump in. And the thing about it as well, he just got in and went about his business, particularly the final fights, which is a bit confronting for some people. Other people in the past have expressed concerns about, going at 100%, things like that. When Craig fought against Nathan, and I think it was that was like one of the final fights in the series, he went up to him and said, we're going 100%, aren't we? He goes, let's put on a show. And as the fight sort of, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but they both hit one another and Craig got hit a couple times off Nathan. He had a smile on his face, like he's excited. He said to me, he goes, man, I was getting hit by this UFC guy, man, it's cool. And that's the mentality you got to have. When this stuff arises, you should just be like, I could potentially get hurt, but you know what? I'm going to throw caution to the wind. I'm going to do my best, and so be it. I might pull off an upset. And that's what Craig did. And the other thing about Craig was the very next day after all this competition, and he must have been sore as because he hasn't trained for a while and he did 5 days of events. He had a boxing fight. He had his first boxing fight the next day, and he showed me he had some bruises and things from the series, and he's like, you know what, and unperturbed. He's like, this is the attitude. I'm going to come in, you know what, you can take me on or whatever. I'm going to come out swinging and I may lose, but you know what, you're going to know you've been in a fight. And that's the mentality that we should have going into self-defense, not all this other stuff.